Where filmmakers and stories take center stage, this is Bond on Cinema. My guest today is writer-director Radha Mehta, who brings a unique and compelling voice to film. A civil engineer turned filmmaker, she holds an MFA in directing from the American Film Institute, an MBA from Kellogg, and degrees from Duke University. But her work is rooted in her lived experience as a first-generation Indian mother and as someone who has navigated hearing loss while maintaining a lifelong connection to music. Now, Radha has built a multi-artistic career spanning music, paintings, and film, and her previous films, including Dosh, Winds of Silence, and Witness, have received international acclaim and numerous awards. Now, with her newest short film, SUNNA, which means listen, she draws directly from her own journey, creating a film that is both deeply personal and universally resonant. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome writer-director Radha Mehta and one of the official selections of this year's Cleveland International Film Festival, SUNNA, to the show. Welcome, Radha.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's a great honor to have you, and what a beautiful film you created. And I know that this film is based on your own lived experience, and the opening scene shows I hope I pronounced this correctly.
Lakshmi.
Lakshmi so she's at the piano playing and she's singing, but then the piano sound goes dull. Is that what happened to you?
Yeah. So my actual story is a span of, takes a place across the span of 8 years. I had been diagnosed with a staph infection when I was 6 months old, and the only way to keep alive was an overdose of antibiotics. So that's kind of like the beginning of my journey. And the doctors didn't know that what the side effects would be, but what the side effects ended up being is a neurosensorial loss in both my ears. And so then that began the journey of like the degradation of my hearing. And over time, it was when I think it was around 7 years old is when I was finally diagnosed with proper hearing loss and actually being able to get hearing aids. But throughout that time, I was born to a family of musicians. My mother was a professional singer at one point in India, and then when she emigrated to the U.S., she just did devotional singing at various temples. And then my dad at one point was a sitar player, and then my brother is a self-taught piano player who eventually had his debut at Carnegie Hall when he was an adult. So I had been surrounded by music, and so there's a whole story in terms of how I was able to connect with music through vibrations before I finally got my hearing aids, and then being able to, have my hearing aids also serve as a tool for me, so that I can go between the world of sound and the world of silence. And throughout that time, I also explored, music by looking at the visual tuner and being able to, perfect my pitch. And singing was just something that I loved to do because I was surrounded, within my family. And the hearing loss definitely made it very complicated. But yeah, so that within that span of the 8 to 10 years, I was able to condense it in the story of this film. And my instrument, the first instrument that I played with my mom was actually our Veena at home. So, we couldn't afford a piano at my young age. But in this context, I wanted to use piano as a Western contrast to the mother's tanpura that you see later in the temple.
So your hearing loss was not 100%?
I would say if I don't have my hearing aids on, I would probably only be able to hear 40% of what the world what a normal person could hear. So I do depend on my hearing aids quite a bit, but yeah. So it sounds muffled. Voices definitely sound muffled because it's that specific frequency that's just very difficult for me. I can hear bass pretty well in general. I can feel it. Some high frequencies I can't hear. So, for instance, an alarm clock that goes on in our house for my family to wake up, I somehow don't hear that specific frequency. Um, yeah, so that's kind of my loss. So I'm not deaf. I'm hard of hearing. So I rely on lip reading often if I don't have my aids on, and of course, even with my aids, I'm very close to people so that I can be able to process everything that they're saying, and of course, captions if I'm on a certain films like or TV when I'm watching shows at home. I always have closed captions on.
Yeah, I'm so
Yeah,
used to reading closed caption now. It's
nice,
just part of the
amazing.
job. Well, did you
Yeah,
okay, because one thing I know with hearing loss, I'm gonna mostly because of the fact that when it starts in a child. So,
yeah.
did it have any detrimental effect on speech at that age?
It Yeah, so my challenge was I didn't speak much. And I think it took my parents a while because they were still, I mean, they were getting versed in English at the same time of just raising me. But it took them a while to realize that I wasn't quite up to par with my peers. I was very smart when it comes to reading and doing things on like math tests and stuff like that that didn't require speech. But it took them a while to realize that my speech was just delayed in general. And when I did speak, I wouldn't have like ending consonants. Like the ending consonants would be missing. So some people would mistake that as me just being an immigrant. And I myself was not an immigrant, but they would just assume that that's how people learn English when they come to this country. And so there was
Whoa.
definitely discovery that was happening, in terms of what was going on. But I do remember when I was in school, there was this one guidance counselor who somehow took note of, she's really smart and she keeps looking up at the teacher. She wants to sit very closely, but then she's not able to hear certain things, or the way she responds is to a totally different question. And a lot of times I was really good at rhyming, in the sense that when someone asked something, I like basically would repeat it, and it was a complete rhyme, but of us totally like out of context. And so when he had asked for some extra testing with me, that's when he had a conversation with my parents. And so then when I did get properly diagnosed with hearing aids, it took a little bit longer for my parents to be able to afford it because it wasn't covered by insurance. So
Yeah.
that was all just the journey.
Yeah, when I saw that scene where it wasn't covered by insurance, it always boggles my mind that
Mhm.
hearing aids are not covered. I mean, it's what we, for most people, if they have the opportunity to get them, insurance should be
Mhm.
paying for that.
Yeah.
It's, because it's part of life, it's part
I mean,
of
it's a true
being,
disability for
yeah,
sure.
it's a true disability. Now, in that scene when the mother and daughter had gone to the temple to perform a worship song,
Hmm.
and when the daughter started singing and the mother slowly puts her hand on her, just to kind of, in her way, kindly just stop, it's due to the fact that she became tone
Off pitch.
deaf or
Yeah.
off pitch.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so that leads me to the question, how does the loss of hearing create the loss of one's identity? Because I saw the look on her face because it saddened her.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely, and I think in that moment, the daughter does, Lakshmi doesn't necessarily know what's happening. She just thinks that, she is on pitch. And sometimes when you are trained in music with great hearing, you can understand intervals really well, right? So, like, if you know your starting note, then you know exactly where the next note is based on that specific melody. And so, in her case, in that specific scene, she wasn't able to hear the drone that was coming in from the tampura, which provides the starting pitch. And she didn't hear the mother's ending note, which would then be the cue for the daughter's starting note, right? And so when she was off pitch, all of a sudden the mother is like, wait a minute, like this doesn't sound right. And any musician, it would be jarring to them, right? And so the daughter did not recognize that. And that's why I paused, the mom says, I'll continue singing. You can sit this one out. It's kind
Yeah,
of what happened.
it's like a drummer whose timing is off.
100%.
You know, so
100%.
but when I saw the look on her face, I got to thinking, and of course she's young, but and this my question is really sometimes based on adults, but some people they place their identity in their talent. And then others, their identity could be cultural, uh, but for the daughter, was her identity based on the ability to play music and to sing?
Yeah, so her identity is very much music driven, but it's also rooted in that culture. And I think that my hope is the understanding is there where this girl loves to sing with their mother. And this is something that they do frequently at a temple. It's when they do the prayers together and they perform in front of, certain guests that are happen to be there. This is just part of their routine. And so when you lose that sense of, connection to music, which gives you so much joy, you also feel like somewhat of a sense of loss to the cultural identity. It's just like, well, if I can't sing, then what does that mean? Like, why isn't God within this religion? Why am I not being protected? And I think that becomes a question through the process. But I think the first and foremost is the loss of identity to the connection of music.
Yeah, that was my first because
Yes.
I kept thinking cultural, but that was really just minor, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. I
she's
mean,
young.
well, she's young. Yeah, she's young. But I think that her mom, I mean, you can see in the way the mom dresses, and playing a tambura is a very Eastern instrument. You can see that that's who she identifies as, right? Is just someone that's very much Indian and in a temple setting. So I think that eventually became part of it. And I think the song has a deep significance specifically to our generation and the generation before us. It is a song that Mahatma Gandhi had repurposed to during our independence movement to unite Hindus and Muslims. And there's obviously a lot of rhetoric that had come out of that, and conflict and whatever the different opinions may be. But it's a song that goes back to, I don't know, I think 16th century, I believe, written by Tulsidas as one of the original creators of that melody. And I just know that anytime we go to a temple or just like when we have friends at home, my mother would always, that's a very easy song that everyone can sing. And so there was that significance as well. And so when you see Lakshmi at the beginning, like playing it on a piano, like a Western version of it, because you rarely hear that, then, and then being able to perform it like in the temple, and then of course come together at the very end of the film in perfect harmony, back on the piano. It's just like that East meets West. And that's just my slow, like my very subtle hint of just this sense of wanting to create unity amongst all the, within our South Asian cultures, and religions in a way, even though this was, largely Hindu driven, but I do have a special love for the Muslim religion as well. So that was kind of like the subtle kind of
Well,
thing.
no,
And there's something that you see at the very end that is an ode to, Muslims as well. So yeah.
I love the fact that you paid attention even for the song. And because I watched this film multiple times, and now hearing you say that and telling the story about the song, it adds so much more invisible depth to the whole story. Because I
Thank
love
you.
when a filmmaker truly pays attention to detail. It could be a song within the film, you know, um, a camera movement, an item in the background that goes with the story. Not that the public will even notice it, but
Mm.
it's there. And because with every film, especially with short films, there's always a story behind the story. And
Yes.
so I love the fact that you really truly paid attention, even down to the song that they both sang. Because I knew when she was singing at the piano Then when they were
Mhm.
in the temple, I knew it was the same song. I didn't know what the song meant, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew that the song was the same because it's like she was practicing, getting ready to go to the temple with her mother. Now, we live in a world where everyone is surrounded by sound, but there is
Mhm.
far more power to learn about ourselves in the realm of silence and listening, wouldn't you say?
100%. And I think, one thing that I do want to share with you is there was a lot of shame around my disability when I was growing up. I grew up at a time where, our skin color is something that we would try to hide about ourselves. We would try to assimilate within the American culture. I was born and raised in Kankakee, Illinois, so we were one of the very few minorities there. And my mom, whenever she wore a bindi and she would drop me off to school, I would say, "Mom, drop me off a block away so that I can walk." And she's like, "Why?" And I just didn't want to explain it to her. And so there was that shame of like the identity part. But then there was shame around my disability when people within our culture would say to my parents that Radha must have done something in a past life to have deserved this condition. And that's very hard for a young person to hear when they've all of a sudden made to feel that they're unworthy of some sort or that they're not good enough all of a sudden. And so when you grow up with that kind of sentiment, then you always feel this need to prove yourself. And to this day, I still have that deeply within me. But over time, and I have to thank my MFA program at American Film Institute. We had just started my school right after the pandemic. And I remember during the pandemic, I could not understand anyone because of the mask. And I was like, I can't hide this disability. I need to be outspoken about it, saying, "I'm sorry, I can't understand you. I'm hard of hearing. Can you please pull down your mask so I can see your lips?" Right. And that's when I started owning it, right? And being public about it. And it was at the school when the very first pitch we had to do for our, exercise films was the director's pitch. And I thought to myself, I said, what stories did I wish to have seen when I was younger so I didn't feel so alone? And it was basically wanting to see South Asian representation, but then also seeing someone that was struggling with something, right? That would be able to come out the other side knowing that they'll have the support that they need, that there had to be some hope. So then I basically told my story, and I was very, to my surprise, I was very grateful that people resonated with that, and they wanted to work with me. And then that's when I started to feel validation that, what, let me just lean into my own truth and see where that goes, right? And
Yeah,
and so it's only,
no, go
yeah,
ahead,
it's only,
Rada.
say again.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying it was only since then I started feeling empowered by the fact that, okay, yeah, I have this disability, but what's really cool is that given how chaotic and noisy this world can be, I have the superpower of being able to just turn it down, take my hearing aids off and just thrive in that silence. And I love that. I really love that. And so it's just a shift in my perspective of my own disability that I actually think is a little bit of a superpower in a way.
You bring something up, on the cultural side, but it's also on the religion side. And it really doesn't matter what religion it is, because, like you said, uh, to have someone say, well, maybe Rada did something in her past life or whatever. When you said that, it reminded me of the story when Jesus's disciples said, because of the lame man, so who sinned? Did he sin or did his parents sin?
Mhm.
And he said, neither. This was all for the glory of God. But when he said it, they didn't understand the magnitude of the last sentence. And when I was thinking about what you were saying, and then I was thinking about that story, in the end, you overcame. And that alone, there's power and there's glory in that. And here
Yes.
you are today, you know, background of a civil engineer, but you're also, an incredible filmmaker. And so I love some of my favorite top 5 short films include a disability.
Oh,
Be-
wow.
Because of the
That's
fact that I want people to understand, regardless what card you were dealt with,
mhm.
whatever the adversity is, you can overcome. There is victory down the road.
Yeah.
And I see this is why I love these short films where, in this case it was hearing loss. I've seen them where they're neurodivergent, if it's
Mhm.
autism. Um, I had one last year where it was um, blindness and
Yeah.
could only hear music with the ear. And so
Yeah.
these stories, I think, resonate with everybody because even though
Mm.
for those of us who don't have a disability, it allows us hopefully to have or gain more empathy
Yeah.
and to be even more greatly inspired by somebody else's situation in which
Yeah.
they triumph, where they
Yeah.
triumph in the end.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful that you share that. I mean, disability, that specific minority is the actual minority that every single human being on planet Earth could potentially be a part of, right? If you think about it, as you get older, certain things start happening. So it is nice that there is that you resonate with stories such as that, because I think that that representation should increase. Unfortunately, a lot of those stories are not necessarily told by disabled filmmakers. And I think that there's been a shift in terms of the sense of empowerment that, yeah, we can lean into that. And then it's not only about triumph or, the challenges that we deal with, but how do we just exist in the world in general, right? I mean, we know it's an ableist world. We've adapted. Don't of course we've adapted to that, but but at the same time, like, who are we just as humans, right? And I think that that was interesting with Lakshmi. This is just on the onset of it, and then now figuring out what's going to happen beyond the film in terms of navigating this and being, hopefully an incredible musician because of it. I think that that specific time period of the mother not knowing what to do and feeling that sense of grief all of a sudden, and then, that's very real. That's very real. I think that a lot of us, especially, I'm a mother as well, and I think that if something had happened to my kids, I think I would also feel that sense of grief, but then also recognize that there is a way. We will make this work just the way that we always do and we always have, and there's definitely a path forward.
Well, the turning point in the film was when she left the temple because she was just, in a way, she was distraught, but
Hmm.
she didn't hear the car backing up.
Yeah.
And that's really, to me, that was the switch in which the mother realized something's wrong.
Yeah, there's danger. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's based on personal experience also,
oh,
I always
well,
have to make sure if I have my family nearby, like they're like, just don't stay near cars, when you're walking in parking lots.
well, even
So,
for us who have good hearing, we don't even
yeah,
hear the EVs driving by us anymore. So
very
we're all looking
silent.
around. But that scene in the film with the music tuner was genius. It was
Thank you.
it
Appreciate that.
was also very beautiful and inspiring because I would rewind it just to watch it because to
Hmm.
take an object that I get, turns the light bulb on
Hmm.
in the character and and then of course what was great about the tuner because with that type of tuner it's also visual. So she's
Yeah.
seeing and she realizes it's
Mhm.
it's eye to ear. Well, of course, she's playing the piano, so that's the reason why I always tell parents get your kid to learn an instrument,
Yeah.
hand-eye coordination, as well as
Coordinate.
learning how to read actual music. Now, if I remember correctly earlier, you said you used a tuner to help train your own ear as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, fun fact, I performed in front of thousands and thousands of people around the world before I ever got into film. So music was my first foray into entertainment. I was often tapped to sing the national anthem at NBA games, and and that's a cappella, so you have to know your first pitch, and you can't mess that up, so you have to know your intervals as well. And so for me, it was always that tuner, the visual tuner, and just making sure that I was like on pitch right before go time. And a lot of times, like with the inner ear monitors and stuff like that, I had to use like certain devices just for that extra boost of help, anytime I'm performing in front of a lot of people. But it's like once I know the intervals of what a song would be, it's just that starting note that I really need help with. And yeah, so a visual tuner was very helpful for me,
Well,
for
okay.
sure.
Since you also sing, and I've heard this
Mhm.
from others, is
Mhm.
the national anthem a difficult song to actually sing?
It is, in my
Now,
humble opinion, it is.
now, my wife and daughter, they both sing, and so anytime we're if it's sports or whatever, and you see the national anthem come on, that's
Mhm.
as soon as the first note hits, they're like they started too high. Now, with the national anthem, in your humble opinion, is it better to
Yeah.
start low and then build up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on people's register, right? I think that, if certain altos, yeah, start low, right? But if you're a soprano, then start a little bit higher. So then you know the arc, right? And we know where the high note's going to be in order to then make the ending land. Um, I have been in a practice situation where I started too high. And then by the time I got to the high note, I was like, oh man, I screwed myself over,
I
So,
was wondering. I was wondering because some people they know that, and there are those who sing
mhm.
it that don't know that at all, and you can tell.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, like, I mean, it became like such a mental exercise because it's just a 1 minute and 30-second song, right? But it's in front of like tens of thousands of people, right? And even though you feel like people are going to cheer you on, however, well, not however you sound, they definitely will, they won't cheer you on if you sound bad. But it's just like you literally from the morning onwards, you have to prep your voice. You have to make sure you have lemon or, like the certain honey and lemon and everything to like make sure it's warmed up and everything. It's such a intense thing just for like a 1 minute and 30-second song. But yeah, the starting pitch matters because you can really screw yourself over
Well,
at the end of
I think the stress today is
it.
that
Mhm.
there's always somebody filming it. So if you mess up, it's going to
Oh,
go online.
100%. Oh, totally.
Well,
It's forever. Internet
it's
is forever.
it's forever. Well, on the
Yeah.
film, the
Yes.
music score in your film is very beautiful, and it
Thank you.
adds quite a bit of emotion to the whole story. So, how important was it for the music score to play a large role in the film?
Yeah, so my composer, his name is Dhruv Goel, and he is an Indian classically trained musician, and we started from before the film shoot. It was really important to get the specific song right in terms of like what the starting note of that would be, because that, you can choose whatever the starting note could be. And the parts of the song that we wanted actually performed in the film, right? And then the specific instrumentation that he used around it was actually ancient instrumentation that he had access to. So it was all live music, and it was awesome. Like that journey was pretty awesome. And for me, I think minimal is better. Like less is more for me. So I try not to oversaturate with too much music. Because my hope is that people can feel the emotions of the performances and let that speak for itself. But there was just that moment when she like left the temple and she was trying to get to the car. I think he used I don't want to miss. I think it was some kind of like it was definitely some kind of ancient instrument, and I'm like the actual word is escaping me, but he said there's only a few in the world for the that have that, and so I was really grateful that we were able to have that in our film.
Yeah, music always brings the film alive, and you're right. I noticed with some, maybe the music could have been pulled back.
Hmm.
There are filmmakers that I talk to who don't really want the music to overshadow dialogue,
Yeah.
which I really believe it should only come at maybe at the very tail end of maybe the last two or three words if you're going to create an emotion. Uh, so no, but in this film, it's very, very beautiful. And like you said, also you don't want to overshadow the performances. So tell me about how you cast your film because you've got quite
Yes.
an all-star cast here with Anisha Nagarajan, Aaliyah Mehta, and Alyssa Diaz, who I recognize from The Rookie. So I always watch The
Yes.
Rookie every week. So I noticed her right off the bat. So how did you get
She's
such
awesome.
an incredible cast?
Well, what's really amazing is that Alia and Anisha are a real life mother daughter. So that helped me tremendously. It was chemistry right there. I didn't have to worry about any kind of rehearsal from that perspective. And really, like, just an amazing story there is Anisha Nagarajan was the lead in Andrew Lloyd Webber's Bombay Dreams in Broadway. And this was years before I ever considered film or storytelling in the form of film. And I remember attending that Broadway show, and I was so blown away. And it was the first time where I felt, wow, how cool is it that a South Asian story can be shown in a Western way and have it resonate like at this grand of a scale? And then here we are years later, my casting director and my producer, Kirtana and Pallavi Sastry, their sisters, they had mentioned that, if for the person to play a mother, the first priority was that whoever we cast has to sing. That sounds at the very least pleasant to me, right? And so, and the way I grew up and the way my mother sang. So when they had mentioned Anisha, I said, "Oh my God, she's like available. Like, you think she'd be interested in this film?" And they said, "Yeah, I think she would be." And I said, like, she is the reason that I even considered like storytelling of South Asian stories, in this Western way. And so then she did express interest. And then my casting director then said, by the way, her daughter is very active in musical theater. She hasn't quite acted in films yet as a lead, but do you want to consider auditioning? I was like, are you kidding me? And so then she sent me a video of her singing a Billie Eilish song. I think it was Ocean Eyes. And I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, who is this girl? And so then the fact that it was a mother daughter, I said, is it possible for me to just cast them too and just call it a day? So it worked out. It really worked out. And the love that they had and the way I was able to tap into Anisha to like also help get the performance that I needed from Alia, it was like a team approach. And I think that that's how I prefer to work as a director is I work with my actors almost as fellow collaborators on the story because they understand the story and they know my take on the story. But then when they bring their own specific, flair to it, it's just that's what to me elevates the story in a lot of ways. So that was amazing. Yeah.
So how did you get Alyssa Diaz?
Yeah, so my producer, Pallavi Sastry, she's very good friends with Alyssa Diaz. They've known each other for many years. And so it was just for me, I wanted an audiologist that reminded me of mine when I was younger. And it was someone that was, definitely not South Asian and someone that was kind and had a nurturing, sensibility. But someone that didn't quite understand our culture. So that's why when I just mentioned it to Pallavi, she goes, "I got the girl for you, Alyssa Diaz," and so that ended up being a direct offer.
Oh, wow,
Yeah,
that is so cool because I watch so many short films and sometimes I'm like, I know that actor, so
yeah.
it's always
She was great.
great.
She was like, we were spitballing on the day that we were filming her. She goes, if I say this and this, like, does this sound okay? And I was like, this actually sounds very reminiscent of what I went through when I was a kid. But then we also knew that we were going to be playing with sound design in that scene because it was from the perspective of Lakshmi. So then we wouldn't necessarily hear everything Alyssa Diaz was saying, but the way she was moving her lips was very important, and it was just, and she's so beautiful to look at, you know what I mean? She's very pleasant on screen, so
Well, that okay. Well, for you, when you finally got your first set of hearing aids, and that they were, let's say,
right.
they were
Here's
finally tuned correctly. So,
my
what
fourth
was that
set, by the
like?
way. Well, it was truly amazing when I was able to hear the difference between like muffled and then being able to actually hear like a bird chirp, or like things in the office, like the coffee brewing. It was quite amazing, but it was also like jarring at the same time because you can hear a little bit of there's a little bit of a bit of a ringing that happens, in certain frequencies. So it's hard to explain, but it's just that part can sound a little bit dissonant. And but the overall feeling was I was very happy. I was like, okay, now I can assimilate. What the problem was is when I went to school the next day with them on, I could actually hear the kids make fun of me. And that's where I started to feel sad because they were like, she's got these big chunkers on her ears. And that's when I started wearing my hair down as opposed to in a ponytail. And, it was just now that I could hear what people were saying about me, I became very self conscious. So then that led me down into a specific path of depression, I guess, when I was younger. And then that's when my mom really leaned into music, and she's like, "We're going to do this together. We're going to have fun." And that became that journey of the music way. And she would often say, "Don't wear your hearing aids when you're performing or when you're singing because you want to feel it. You want to feel the vibrations." And a lot of times when you do have hearing aids when you sing, that feedback can be a little bit jarring. So it's better just to rely on like what it is that you're feeling in your throat.
Ah, okay. Because see, I know that and I guess it happens when people get hearing aids for the first time. Your brain is really
You're
being
so big.
retrained.
They're huge. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, because you know, we all, we all have noises that happen around us, but we've trained subconsciously to tune them out.
Yeah.
And so, and I guess the same way happens when someone gets hearing aids. You hear these sounds for the first time, like you said, it could be jarring, but
Mhm.
eventually, on a regular basis,
You get-
the brain and the hearing connection is starting to tune out those things that where they don't become jarring anymore, correct?
No, that's very true. I mean, you assimilate essentially, and you adapt to what it is. And sometimes, if it is jarring, I mean, back then I didn't have the ability to control the volume. Now I do. There's like Bluetooth technology and all that, but um, you just have to flip them out a little bit every now and then if it felt like there was a ringing tone to it. And it's really just certain frequencies, it's just it can be really like whew, and then just certain frequencies where you just don't hear anything at all, even with hearing aids. So
Well, what
yeah.
temple did you film at? Because the temple was very beautiful in the film.
Yeah, so the Malibu Hindu temple. And that is such a sacred space for many of us South Asians who, grew up in the Hindu religion, to be able to go to here in Los Angeles. And an interesting story there is that the original shoot date was when the fires happened. And that was devastating because I had to evacuate, and Malibu, the Hindu temple, was part of that, part of the zone in the Pacific Palisades. And so I thought that I don't know if I could actually get to make this film, and I can't do it without a temple because that was such a central location to the story. But this specific film, I had won a grant from CAPE, which is the Coalition of Pacific Islanders and Entertainment. And they had a date in terms of when we were going to screen our finished films. And when you backward engineer from there, the latest date that I could literally do was just, either the date that we originally had when the fires happened, or maybe 2 weeks after then. That was the latest possible in order to make our delivery. So I felt this pressure, but then at the same time, I was like, who am I to make a film when the world is burning down, right? I just felt like this sense of like moral decay within myself. But it was my team that says, no, we need this creative distraction. And thankfully, the Malibu Hindu temple was not touched one bit from the fires. There's something about the sacred space that it just was not touched at all. And it was literally in the middle of it. And so the fact that they came back to say that, hey, we just needed some time to rest because we weren't allowed to come here, but now that we are allowed to come back, we'd be ready to allow you to film. And I was so grateful for that. So when we did it there, it was just like extra special. It was extra spiritual that the community that came to be the background in that film, they were really praying like that it was them. I said, hey, pray the way you normally do when you come to this temple. And so we were able to capture that within the film, so it became really spiritual for us.
Wow, another story within a story.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
now you are in an official selection at not only the Cleveland International Film Festival, but also the Indian Film Festival in Los Angeles. What do you hope that
Yes.
audiences will take away after seeing your film?
Yeah. First of all, those selections are really exciting. Within Cleveland, we're part of the Film Slam program, so we're going to have 7 screenings there. And what's really incredible to me, and this is the first time, is they're actually busing kids from all over Cleveland to come in to see this film. And so it's going to be really prevalent amongst youth that are within that area. And the reason why I'm so grateful for that is because I wish I would have seen a film like this when I was that age, right? When I was younger, so that I could feel that representation. So it's like full circle for me to be able to like represent it that way. And they've been so supportive. This is my second time at that festival. So, and then in IFLA, the Indian Film Festival of Los Angeles, that was an amazing surprise because they're very curatorial. Like they select only, I think, 10 short films and a few feature films, and it's a very prestigious film festival amongst South Asians, and the fact and most of the films that they often choose are films from India. So I was very surprised that they chose an American film, but it obviously had the specific sensibility, and it's going to be a great time. And I think that specific festival, I'm able to have my cast and crew attend, and they could see it for the first time. So
Well, so how, for you, how much of a responsibility do you feel to represent South Asian filmmakers?
yeah, that's a great question, and to also answer like what I hope people can take away from this. So first of all, I'm just one voice, right? I'm just one specific voice through my lens as a South Asian, not as an immigrant, but as a person who was born and raised here. So I'm very much American as well, but through the lens of this disability and through my past of just the various the relationships I've had with certain people, I channel that into my stories. It turns out a lot of people resonate with that. But by no means am I feeling the sense of responsibility, nor do I claim to have the responsibility of representing our culture as a whole, right? So that's important, and I do think that through my storytelling, I hope more and more my fellow South Asians are able to feel empowered to tell their stories as well, because each unique story matters. And it matters to that younger self, and it matters to the younger kids who wish to see that representation. And in terms of what I hope people can get out of this specific film is is really just the I don't know, the sense of being able to overcome a grief or any kind of sense of loss through love and empathy first and foremost, and recognize that us we're humans, and whether if we have any kind of flaw or disability, I think that there's something so beautiful about that in the way we can continue to channel beauty in the ways that we know how. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some very powerful, very beautiful South Asian films in the last couple of years, and Suna is another one of those that I just add to the list because this is an incredible film. I can't wait to see how far this film goes this year through the
Thank you.
festival circuit. But ladies and gentlemen, this deeply personal and emotionally resonant short film, SUNNA, meaning listen, was written and directed by Radha Mehta. Now, inspired by Radha's own lived experience, the film offers a powerful and intimate exploration of identity, loss, and rediscovery through the lens of music and silence. Now, Suna follows a young Indian musician whose world is upended by sudden hearing loss. And as silence takes hold, she is forced to confront the loss of not only her craft, but her sense of self. Now, through memory, touch, and cultural connection, she begins a journey towards reclaiming both her music and her identity, blending emotional authenticity with a sensory, cinematic approach. The film invites audiences into a rarely depicted experience, transforming silence into something deeply expressive and profoundly human. With its blend of personal storytelling, cultural specificity, and universal emotional themes, Suna stands out as a powerful exploration of resilience and artistic identity. And its selection at the Cleveland International Film Festival, as well as the Indian Film Festival of Los Angeles, marks an important moment in the film's journey, bringing a deeply human story about loss, adaptation, and enduring power of music to international audiences. And Radha, this film clicks off all the boxes for me. It was
Thank you. I love that.
emotional, it was inspiring, it was beautiful, and I cannot wait to see where this film goes this year for you.
Thank you so much. I loved speaking with you, and it's quite a check, a box check for me to have the opportunity to speak with you. So thank you.
Well, you're very, very welcome, and I really can't wait to see what you do next in the world of film.
Thank you. Yeah, my feature. I'm working on it.
All
I
right,
need all
well,
the support I can. So,
when that feature gets done, you know where to come.
oh yes, definitely. I can't wait.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you are attending the Cleveland International Film Festival or the Indian Film Festival in Los Angeles or any film festival throughout the year where SUNNA is actually appearing, make sure you are sitting in the audience because I can guarantee one thing. Make sure you sit there and listen and be
Listen,
inspired by cinematic beauty and a little bit of magic with this incredible film. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can watch or listen to all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime Show, our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, iTunes, and more. And remember, you're either going to see me at the movies or from the red carpet.